This story name is जेम्स एंड हर डायरी। इस स्टोरी को कोई लड़की पढ़ता तो बहुत अच्छा होता, लेकिन कोई ना, मैं ही पढ़ता हूँ इस फटी आवाज़ में। My name is Janet. When I was 5 years old, at that time my parent had an accident with a car. My father died on the spot, and my mother died in hospital 2 days later while fighting death. At that time, I became an orphan only because both my parents were orphans. But after a while, a man in suit and boot come to me, and I asked him who you are. The man hugged me in tears, and he said, I am your mother's friend. I asked him, what is your name? He said, James, my name. He told me, your name would be Janet. I say, yes, my name is Janet. James, tell me, Janet, you want to go home? I say, yes, I want to go home, James. I don't like being here. James then take me to his house and he accept me as his own daughter. Then I start living with my new dad, James. James then admitted me to the new school. James would take me to and from school every day. Most of the time, we eat outside because my father James' cooking was so bad. 2 weeks later, a beautiful woman come to our house. The woman asked James about me. Then James took him to another room. There they talked for a while. Then the woman come to me that your name is Janet. You have to look like your mother. He introduced himself and said, my name is Ruth. I am James and your mother's friend. I talked to Ruth for a long time that day, and I don't have to eat James' handiwork. Ruth cooked dinner for us. The three of us ate dinner at the same time. Ruth would come to our house occasionally, and he would take me for a walk with him. I told Ruth that if he come to our house, he would cook for me and for James. My James very calm and little less talkative. After many days like this, I realized that my father James used to get drunk. James used to come home drunk every Sunday. I noticed from time to time that James looked at me with teary eyes, sharing the house with my new dad who goes a year away. On the day my mother and father died, Ruth and I that day went to give flower to my parents' grave. But James did not come with us. James returned home drunk that night. Ruth grabbed James and took him to his room. Ruth took off his shoe and laid him on the bed. After this incident, my anger toward James grew. James would occasionally take me for a night walks. I loved the night when James would take me for a walk with him. Ruth used to come to our house to tidy up James' house because James was very messy. Ruth teach me how to pack my own clothes. I would pack my clothes and my room that way. Another year passed away. Like before, James didn't come with us to give flower to my mother and father's grave. This day, James returned home drunk at night without saying a word, went to his room and lay down. Once, James had to go but out for a week for some work. That one week spent a very good day with my Ruth. Everyone will come to school with their own parents at a school event that year. I also tell James for that James take Ruth with us. James agreed to take Ruth with us. That day Ruth dressed James well. Then James and Ruth looked very nice together. I take a picture, two of them. Ruth is looking deeply at James. Maybe Ruth would have liked James. Then the three of us go to school together for the first time that day. The three of us went out together. I eat dinner outside that day. One day I tell Ruth that you are very nice and soft, just like my mother. Will you be my mother? Ruth said, yes, I want to be, but James doesn't like me. He liked another girl. I say, you are very good, but why did James like him, not like you? Ruth say, no one can live without her, just like you. Then I started spending the day like before. James would take me to visit his father's courthouse for time to time. In this way, 3 more years passed. Suddenly, one night, Ruth come to our house. Ruth asked me, where your father? I say, James is in his room. Ruth goes to James and hug him and tell James, I loved you. Please marry me. I know you don't love me, yet I want to be with you by your side. How much Ruth loves James was evident from the look on his face that day. Ruth looked at James and cried. It seemed to me that if Ruth don't get James that way that day, she didn't. get James anymore. James was look at me with with tears in his eye. After 1 hour like this, James said softly, I can't, Ruth, I can't marry you. Ruth said, okay, I understand. I come to you with high hope. You are now 30 years old. How long will I wait? Today, Jimmy proposed me to marry her. But tell me what to do. James also started crying and said, I don't know. Ruth left our house crying that was that he was okay. I then thought of his Jimmy Devil. I found out later that Jimmy is Ruth office friend. Ruth come to our house once again 1 month later. Ruth and I went to live flower at my parents' grave once again. Ruth told me on the way home with flower, Janet, look at your father James. He is very good man and he loves you very much. A week later, I married Jimmy and moved to another city. I say, why Ruth? Stay with us. Ruth say, it can't be. How long I will wait for James? I was very angry that day. Ruth was waiting for James to invite to his wedding. James returned home drunk at night. James saw Ruth come to our house. Then James comes to our side. I was so angry that I asked James what he was talking about. James, you are so selfish. You can't understand the mind of the one who loves you. You can be my mother's friend because you are a bad guy. A bad guy. Ruth is living with us. Ruth is marrying someone else and moving away from us. James say, Ruth, are you leaving? Ruth say, yes. A week later, I am moving to another city, marrying Jimmy, to marry Jimmy. Disappointed, James sit down in his chair. I was crying and tears welled up in Ruth's eye. Tears welled up in James' eye. Then James looked at Ruth. Then James looked at me for a while. After looking at me for a moment, he went and hugged Ruth. The two of them start crying after hugging, and I start crying when I saw them. Then James asked Ruth, will you wait a little longer for me here? Ruth said, of course. James then give a kiss on the forehead and say, I love you, Ruth. Wait for me. With that, James drive away. I told Ruth. Where Ruth? James went. Ruth said. James went to his father's courthouse. I told him at Ruth what James had done there. Ruth then took a ring out of her purse bag and said, maybe he went to get this thing. I told Ruth, who Ruth? Where did you get the ring? Ruth said, this ring gave me Uncle Scott. Then Ruth handed me the ring. Ruth, tell me which one he likes so much. James, for which James could not love you. How sad you were that day. Ruth told me it was hard to forget my first love as I could not forget James. The girl who changed loved cheated on James by showing him a new dream in life. I told Ruth who that girl was. Ruth was a little sorry and told me she was your mother Jennifer. When I heard that, I was shocked. Ruth brought out a diary from James' room and handed handed to me. I opened the diary and saw a old picture of my mother, Jennifer, and James. There are lots of pictures of them together, from small to big, in the diary. My mother, Jennifer, and James looked so beautiful. Lots of pictures of them together, from small big diary. My mother, Jennifer, and James looked so beautiful in those pictures. Then I sit down with Ruth and begin reading जेम्स डायरी। अगर इसको अच्छा लगा, सबको अच्छा लगा, तो लाइक एंड सब्सक्राइब करना। और इसका नेक्स्ट पार्ट आएगा जेम्स डायरी सेकंड पार्ट, ये आखिरी वाला होगा। प्लीज़ लाइक एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माय यूट्यूब